Hello and welcome back to my studio. It's Lois here from Lois and Morgana Davidson Art, and today I'm going to be showing you how I created depth and distance in this landscape painting, creating the effects of a distant river. There's a small amount of linear perspective in this scene. As you can see, the fence in the foreground leads the viewer to the large tree on the right. So as always, I'm sketching out my scene lightly in pencil, putting in the line for the distant hills, the river, and then a couple of different planes of land before I then create the line at the front for my tree line, and then put in a diagonal line leading to where my larger tree will be. Pause the video here if you'd like to take a closer look at the sketch. But just before the demo, to let you know that my new book, Landscapes in Watercolour, Techniques and Tutorials for the Complete Beginner, is available to purchase from all good bookstores online and is due to be released in the USA on 2nd of July, so please follow the links below. I'm going to be getting most of this painting in one go. Wet in wet and wet on dry. I'm painting the sky wet in wet, so I'm using a large wash brush. This is my Princeton Aqua Elite 1.5 inch Mottler brush, but any wash brush will do to wet the whole sky area. Then I shall paint the sky in very simply just with cobalt blue and leave some gaps for clouds and try and create a nice atmospheric sky, trying to depict a nice summer day where the sky's blue and just a few lovely faint white clouds. I'll try to keep things slightly paler as I come down towards the horizon, then use a clean damp brush to remove any water that might be pooling up across the horizon line. I'm using Milford cold pressed watercolour paper. It's taped to my board and my board's at an angle of about 20 to 30 degrees. Now I've gone in and picked up a fairly rich mixture now of sap green mixed with raw sienna and a touch of raw umber. I'm touching it into my sky. The sky is still damp, of course, so this wet on dry application of paint is going to soften and blend a little bit into the sky and hopefully give me the look of depth and distance. But if you're not confident in putting in the hills against a wet sky like this, then leave your painting to dry first. I'm varying up my mixtures of this green, making it slightly earthier, slightly bluer in places, and then pulling across the scene various brush strokes that are just trying to suggest distant field boundaries. And now you can see that I've left a gap for my distant river. Kept it nice and small. It was penciled in at the beginning, if you remember, and this is a brighter mix on this side of the river as we come a little closer. Hopefully, by varying up my greens and keeping them slightly bluer and more muted in the background, then that pushes those distant hills backwards. Now popping in some really dark paint here. This is a mixture of cobalt blue, burnt sienna, sap green. Just mopped up a little bit of run from the sky there. This is another reason for leaving things to dry if you're less confident than me. Then continuing to vary up the greens and pull them across, filling in my various different fields which I drew in at the beginning. Then putting in the foreground, following the line of perspective that I put in, where there's going to be a little fence. Again, varying up my greens, using various mixes of sap green, burnt sienna, cobalt blue, raw sienna and raw umber. Just making little adjustments as I go. This is a really nice dark mixture. I added a little bit of Payne's grey to my green just to really desaturate it and make it almost sort of a blackish green. Really thick, rich paint so it doesn't run on the wet washes and stays there. And putting in this lovely tree line, again being guided by my pencil sketch from the beginning, which is why a pencil sketch is so important as a good starting point for a painting like this. And I'm dropping in a few lighter value darks where I've penciled in my fence in the foreground. just in preparation for putting in the fence later, and dragging through a little bit of the paint with the tip of my palette knife, or you could use the corner of a flexible plastic store card just to add a little bit of extra texture. Running a flat brush, clean and damp, across the base of the trees just to even that out a bit. And then using my palette knife to put in a few branches, scraping through the rich paint of these trees. Not too many, but just enough to add a suggestion of detail there. Just enough to draw the eye, because this, of course, is our focal point. Well, while I'm doing this, I've realised that I've got a large, very large runback or cauliflower mark forming across almost the whole of my foreground, following the line of the fence. Now, this is where I didn't control the water in my paint mixture correctly, and so it's causing, excuse me, that ugly mark. So I'm taking richer paint on quite a dry paintbrush and correcting that by kind of moving the paint around and applying more drier paint there, and this way I can get rid of that mark. These cauliflower marks will only appear if you use wetter paint onto a drying wash, and that pushes the existing paint away and creates those marks. So always try to remember to work from wet to dry. So each time you introduce more paint onto your wash, make sure it's drier than the paper itself to avoid those sort of marks. So now I'm just etching through the damp paint in a few places to get some highlights on my fence posts here and there. And that's the end of the first part, or the main part of the painting. I now need to leave it to dry completely. So here's the dry watercolour painting, and as you can see, we've got some really interesting suggested detail just through painting very loosely. By following our sketch, we've created different planes of land, and you can see quite clearly the unpainted river in the background. So the first thing I'm going to do to finish this off is just to add a bit of cobalt blue in that river, just very lightly with my flat brush, to represent the sky just reflected in that distant water, but still leaving some white to, I suppose, reflect the clouds, or just the light reflecting off the water seen from a distance. And then I'm adding some of that darker green here and there just to increase the field boundaries, cover over any white marks that are a little bit too much. Then maybe to enhance the effect of distant trees across that distant range of hills. Just touching the tips of the brush. And then cleaning it up with a clean damp brush where I think it might be a little bit too heavy. And I'm going to dab the paint off there. I didn't like it there, so I'm quickly dabbing it off before it dries. I think leaving it quite blurry in the distance on the right adds to the aerial perspective and the sense of recession. I'm using a small calligraphy brush now and a mixture of Payne's Grey and burnt sienna to paint in my gate. Just a few horizontal bars, a couple of vertical fence posts or gate posts and crossbars, and then I can move on and add a darker line to my mid-ground fence posts and my foreground fence posts. Notice how the fence posts get closer together as they get further away, which adds to the sense of distance and depth and perspective. So I think those last few refinements with the rigger brush, just refining the tree branches and trunks and the fence posts in places, have finished this loose painting off really nicely. So removing the tape, and we see the painting with a clean white border, which helps us to look at it with fresh eyes and see if we need to make any adjustments to it. But I'm quite happy with this, and I hope beginners particularly will see how important it is to make distinctions between the particular planes of land in your painting, which of course you can paint completely like me at the beginning of the process, adding one layer to the next, or you can allow each part, like the sky and each plane of land, to dry before you introduce the next one. Play around with it and see what you think. And also adding perspective with the gateposts and fence in the foreground leading towards the distant tree, which gives a nice sense of perspective and also creates a nice S or Z shaped composition leading the viewer into the painting and then around it. Well, I hope you found that helpful watching this process. If you enjoyed the video, then please click on the thumbs up button. It really helps with our reach. And if you're new here, or if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, then I invite you to do so. It's free to do, and it really does help let the YouTube algorithm know that people are interested in watching our videos and pushes them out to more people. And of course, thank you so much to everyone that supports us financially on Patreon. We really do appreciate each and every one of you, and we couldn't run the channel without you. Many thanks again. Take care and happy painting. Bye.